point where our consumers in America are treated equitably, because we pay so much more than all these other countries. And so that's something we're fighting. We're in court against the FDA on that. They're stonewalling us as best as they can to try to do it, because, look, at the end of the day, what the FDA is doing is they're running interference for the pharmaceutical companies, and that's what they've done, and we've seen it obviously throughout the last few years in very stark relief. So we're going to stay on that, but we also understand we can't put all our eggs in that basket. You have a lot of issues. If you look at Biden inflation from July 2021 to July 2022, average price increase for prescription drugs, 31.6% increase. So the inflation is bad enough as it is, and that's over and above even the general inflation rate. So that has a huge impact on a lot of folks, particularly senior citizens throughout the state of Florida. And what we find when we look at this is just there's so much bureaucracy, there's middlemen, there's a whole host of things that have been built up over the years. So there's a lot of people that make a lot of money, and the people that end up paying are the consumers, some of our small businesses. You have these community pharmacies, they're getting hit, and so we wanted to do something about it. So last year I did an executive order to bring more accountability with pharmaceuticals for state contracts, and that was really ordering our agencies to get in line when they negotiate these things and take on issues like pharmacy benefit managers. PBMs is what they're called, and these are the middlemen that operate in between the system. And so that's good, but what we want to do is do that across the state. And of course, I can't do that through executive order. We have to work with the legislature to be able to do that. And so that's what we're here today to announce, that we are going to work with the legislature. I've had productive conversations with many members there, that we are going to do the most comprehensive transparency legislation in Florida history with respect to prescription drugs. And that is going to affect not just the transparency, but also the accountability. And probably the most significant thing that we're doing in this proposed legislation is reining in these unchecked pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs. They have the three largest PBMs control 80% of the market right now. They're not seen by the public. Most people have no idea who this is. I didn't know until we started looking into the healthcare reforms, the role that they actually play in this. But they act as middlemen between insurers and pharmaceutical companies. And they face scrutiny nationwide for what they've done with some of their trade practices, and have actually had to pay a lot of money in certain situations. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to protect consumers and increase accountability. There's going to be three main things: prohibiting spread pricing, prohibiting reimbursement clawbacks, and then tackling issues with so-called steering. So what does all that mean? So steering, you have these things, they're vertically integrated effectively. So it's all kind of one organization that works together, PBMs in the middle. What they will say is consumers that are involved there have to use a certain mail-in pharmacy to fill their prescriptions. So they don't give you the option to shop around for the best deal. So what we're going to say is you're free to use the mail-in pharmacy that they're telling you to use, but you do not have to use that, and you have the ability to make your own decisions if it's best for you. We also want to make sure that we protect a lot of the smaller pharmacies, in particular, from surprise bills and clawbacks from PBMs. And so what will happen is months after a prescription is filled, they'll get hit with increased bills that they then have to pay to the PBM. Well, where do you think they're going to go to get that money? They're going to raise the cost of the drugs that they're providing to their customers. And so it absolutely creates an upward pressure on prices. We're also, this idea of spread pricing is they'll charge customers, PBMs will charge customers more for a prescription than it actually costs, and then they keep the difference. And so that's basically just skimming money. It's not really offering value. when they're doing it. So this is going to be really significant, and I think that, in fact, I was just, over the Christmas holiday, I have some kids that are under the weather. The first lady was under the weather, so she sends me out to fill a prescription. So I go, and the guy's telling me, like, these PBMs are killing his business, and I'm like, well, we're going to do something about it. Don't worry. So I think it'll be a big victory for community-based pharmacies. And if you think about it, I mean, this is just one very small part. You look at healthcare overall, one of the biggest problems with healthcare is you have these massive entities that control so much of it. Big pharma, big insurance, big government, all those different things, and really can crush the little guy. So I think it's good to have community-based pharmacies where you can go in your own community. You shouldn't have to rely on one big corporate chain every time. So we are also going to increase the registration requirements of PBMs so that we ensure a more comprehensive evaluation is conducted prior to doing business here in the state of Florida. Today they pay $5 registration fee and they disclose very little about themselves to the state, and there really isn't much in the way of accountability. So this will require PBMs to disclose all organizations affiliated with the applicant, including any affiliated pharmacies or companies within their corporate umbrella. It also require PBMs to disclose any complaints or settlement agreements they've been party to prior to operating in Florida. And we'll also direct the Office of Insurance Regulation to take action against PBMs who violate state law and hold them accountable just as they do with insurance. So these are really long overdue reforms. I think you've actually seen some other states do something similar, and I think they've had good results, and so we want to do what works, and we want to make sure that we're going to be able to do. We also, though, are highlighting price increases that drug manufacturers are doing. Transparency is very important, and we want to make sure that all licensed manufacturers submit an annual report outlining and justifying their increases over the previous year. So you can see that. You can see what's driving it, because people are getting hit with this. It's very difficult. So that report will be posted online, and we'll be able to provide insurers advance notice to plan for price adjustments rather than pass it on directly to the consumers, which they've been doing. And that's obviously very difficult when you look at how much more things have cost. And when they'll say inflation is down to 7%, that things aren't less expensive, it's just increasing at a slightly lower rate. It's still going up. But you have an 8%, and then the next month they say year over year 7%, that's still increasing. You are not seeing it actually go down with very much of anything. And really the energy has been kept in check to a certain extent globally because China has been doing these lockdowns for however many months. And that obviously causes them to use less energy, and they're one of the biggest energy users, if not the biggest in the world. So you have that, and so I just think you're going to see a lot of pressure on consumers going forward, and I'm not sure that spending another $1.8 trillion omnibus is going to help inflation at all. I think it's likely going to make it much worse, and you're plowing money into a lot of agencies like CDC and NIH who have failed during COVID over the last few years. They're not doing any accountability with any of that. They're not doing any accountability at the border for what's been going on. That's how you're supposed to use the power of the purse, to rein in the executive when they're doing bad things. This was just a blank check. And so from a governance perspective, obviously very problematic, but then definitely isn't doing anything to lighten the load on inflation. So all being told, we want to do whatever we can to make an impact for Floridians. I think this package of reforms is a great step in the right direction. I think we're going to get broad support in the Florida legislature for that. And so I'm pleased to be here to say that this will be something that we'll be pursuing. And I think you've seen over the last 4 years, when we say we're going to do something, we usually do get it done. So stay tuned. Okay. Joe Latipo, Surgeon General.